Welcome to Total Apex Sports. This is the fourth and goal. We have Cody, our Bears beat writer, and we have Max, our fantasy beat writer and resident Eagles fan. But yeah, at first we kind of have to get started on the news about the Jets firing Robert Saleh. Um, I thought this would potentially happen maybe like mid-season, but for it to happen when the Jets are 2-3 is kind of surprising. Max, you can start. What were your thoughts on that?
It definitely flabbergasted me that it happened just a mere 5 games in, but it just felt like the writing was on the wall with this stuff. It just felt like when the coach and the quarterback are not on the same page at all, and when you give that much power to the quarterback, that you can't fire the owner and you get rid of the 40-year-old quarterback who they've paid a lot of money to. It just came down to the coach. And obviously there's the reports where, Woody Johnson, the owner, was a London ambassador, and he was embarrassed by having all his friends watch that performance in London. It feels like every London game there's like some crazy news that comes out with a firing or something. But it wasn't shocking. They're just not playing well, and now they have. It's weird. If they win on Monday night, they're a first place team. But it just seems like whenever Aaron Rodgers is involved, it just seems like the whole franchise becomes a mess.
Right. Yeah, Cody, you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers came out and he said that he was blindsided by the firing of Robert Saleh.
Yeah, no.
I don't think there's a person on the planet that believes that. It is a little bit interesting that they went head coach over Nathaniel Hackett, who has basically been kicked out of every offensive coordinating job he's ever had. Probably just the rapport that Rodgers has with Hackett from the days in Green Bay. Probably the only thing that really saved his job. But yeah, man, this Jets team, I want to like them. I really do. I'm kind of rooting for the old man, right? You want to see Aaron Rodgers kind of do some Tom Brady-ish things, but it seems like feet just keep going in people's mouths as they kind of go along, and they're saying the wrong thing, and the product on the field isn't really translating to victories like we all kind of thought it might. And here they are, going to be playing a down Buffalo Bills team on Monday, and if they win, I think they're going to be in first place in their division. So I don't know what's going on. I kind of hope that they can right the ship. It's good drama for media, but you kind of wish that they would get their act together and be a little bit more successful with all the talent they have on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, so basically the defensive play caller, or I think linebacker coach or D-line coach, Greg Ulbrich is taking over. The funny thing is, like, they definitely can beat the Buffalo Bills if they just like clean up some of the penalties and start a little faster. Just because the Bills are coming off of a rough game against the Texans, where like I know Josh Allen doesn't have the weapons he has anymore, but he looked really bad. Like, and then that was before the Ravens destroyed them the week prior. So the Jets have a huge opportunity to potentially get to the AFC East. I think I saw a stat where it was like backup or backup coaches or interim head coaches that take over. They usually win that first week back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because like the defense was fine. It was kind of just like the play calling. It just has to be better. Whether it's on it's definitely on Hackett's end for sure. But that's something that you just have to hope that gets better. Um, but yeah, real quick, we can preview tomorrow's game. It's a divisional matchup between the Niners and Seahawks. The Seahawks are coming off a wild game against the Giants, where that blocked field goal to win the game, and the Niners just got upset by the Cardinals. So yeah, Cody, where do you see this game going in Seattle?
Yeah, boy, you like to think that the Seahawks are now vulnerable at home after that kind of poor performance they put up against a New York Giants team without Malik Neighbors in the lineup. I don't know. I think the Niners are going to come in hungry, and they lost to the Cardinals. That was kind of weird. Not very many NFL pundits predicted that, but James Conner did have a nice little game running the football. And I expect, a far more talented running back in Kenneth Walker to still be able to do some things against that vaunted Niners defense for some fantasy managers out there. And, you just want to see DK Metcalf have a game where he puts up big numbers, which he does a lot, but a game where he doesn't fumble or something, or have like some stupid penalty where he gets a personal foul and sets his team back 15 yards. And I think if the Seahawks are going to win this game at home against the Niners team that's going to come in angry, he's got to play a clean game. And Kenneth Walker has to go in. Geno Smith, he's been pretty consistent all year. I think he's still leading the league in passing yards. So if he just keeps doing his thing, takes care of the football and distributes it well, and they can play a relatively clean game, I think the Seahawks have a good shot to win here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I was kind of stunned by their loss. I felt actually better about them with the loss to Detroit. I thought when you watch them on the field against a talented team like Detroit, they are just, in my opinion, just as talented as any team in the league, especially with their weapons. Teams would kill for Tyler Lockett or JSN to be their third or second option. And I feel like, Geno, he's not this top 5 level quarterback, but he gets the ball out quick. He doesn't really turn the ball over that much. This is a big game because if Seattle wins, they get a pretty big margin on the division. So it's in Seattle. I would be stunned if they would lose back-to-back games in a week at that stadium. But San Francisco, again, when they're off schedule, Purdy really struggles. I mean, he's had a really great, I think he's actually played a lot better than people think.
Mm-hmm.
But you can tell when things kind of go off the plan, things get a little shaky with him. But again, it's weird. This is a weird division where I thought there'd be 3 clear teams, but it seems like other than Seattle, no one's been healthy in this division so far. So I think this is a big game for Seattle. If they win, they can have a really good shot at winning the division.
Yeah, against the Cardinals, like I know they haven't had McCaffrey for a while. Like Jordan Mason's been great. Yeah, they're just missing like I don't know, because before the Cardinals game, they were like, Purdy won big. I think it was against the Rams without Kittle and Debo, and they had Ayuk with the slow start. He finally got back on track last week with a monster game. But in terms of it's basically a coin flip. Like, who really wants this game? Because it's going to be really close. In terms of the next game, we have the London game with the Jaguars, who got their first win over the Colts barely over Joe Flacco, and then the Bears, who had a very good outcome on offense, specifically against the Panthers. Cody, you think the win streak extends this week?
I do. The Bears are favored to win this game. I think that they can take care of business against the Jaguars defense, who ranks dead last against the pass. So the Jaguars pass defense has allowed 10 passing touchdowns on the year, and they're allowing the most yardage per game. So with the Bears passing attack finally being healthy, with Keenan Allen in the lineup consistently, and he didn't have a big statistical game last week, but he was out there at almost every snap, and just his mere presence for that offense. He's drawing coverage in the slot over the middle away from other pass catchers. DJ Moore had a fantastic game. Rome Odunze wasn't really anywhere to be found, but Cole Kmet had a nice game, and DeAndre Swift had a nice game catching the football too. So I think finally Keenan Allen and Caleb Williams connect for their first touchdown in this game, and it's just a good opportunity for the Bears to take yet another step forward against a suspect defense as they roll into their Week 7 bye.
Yeah, not to interrupt, but George Ployo once said, should I drop Keon Coleman or Josh Down for Juju? I probably would drop Coleman. I just don't think that offense is hyper targeting one player. Like even
Yeah.
even like a breakout rookie. I don't know. I know he scored that long touchdown last week, but he's still sharing a lot of snaps with all the other receivers. I mean, we saw Juju on Monday in the Rashid Rice role basically have a what was it? When's the last time Juju was good? Like 2020, like
A while
2021.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. We saw
I,
that role. Yeah,
I was gonna say Josh Downs had a really good game this past week. So
yeah. I
um,
would not drop him
I
yet.
think if you're like I feel like indie fantasy players, if you should probably get them when Anthony Richardson isn't on the field, because it does seem like they struggle fantasy wise when they're not when Flacco's the
Right.
quarterback. I feel like everyone's getting the ball and Taylor's hurt, but Juju, yeah, I don't know. I think that 100-yard game doesn't seem like a sustainable thing though for him.
Yeah, it's probably not if Richardson's back. I guess it would just be like a bench. Like you would just wait
Yeah.
and see, how he looks coming off of his injury. But yeah, going back to the Jaguars Bears. I mean, I know the Jaguars. Brian Thomas has looked electric. Another rookie receiver that's basically been a wide receiver 2/1.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Bears defense is, I feel like it's too good to not harass Trevor Lawrence and their running back Travis Etienne. I mean, he's dealing with the shoulder injury. Like he's playing through it, but Tank Bigsby looks like he's gonna take over pretty soon. But that's what he's in the Jag Bears.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I feel like if Jane Daniels wasn't putting up records, I think people would be higher on Caleb. I think Caleb has gotten significantly better every week. Where I thought like the first couple of weeks he was kind of feeling like he was the college guy where he was trying to scramble around, and he thinks because he's that special they won't get him, but taking a lot of sacks. But he's just been. I think Keenan Allen being out was a more underrated factor, just the middle of the field being more open for Caleb. I just think, Jacksonville just seems like a mess. Doug Peterson feels like he's like the next coach, probably to not have a job soon in the NFL. And Trevor Lawrence they almost blew that game to the Colts at home with Joe Flacco, and they were up by 2 touchdowns. The fact that they had to win with the late field goal didn't really, I feel like they were dominating that game. The fact they came that close didn't really make sense. But again, Jacksonville always, for some reason, changes their season around in London every year. It feels like when they play in London, they get on
Yeah,
streaks.
that is true.
They're there for 2 weeks, so maybe this gets them going. But I prefer Caleb and the Bears this week.
Yeah, I think Payne asked pick 3 this week full PPR. Man, if these are your options, I feel like you got to make some trades because your team's
Yeah, I
kind
know.
of I don't know what league you're, but the teams are kind of loaded.
Mixon's out.
I guess
though.
we have to see. I guess we have to see if Mixon plays.
Yeah.
It'll probably be either Gibbs, Mason, McLaurin, or Ayuk, and then I guess with who they play.
I like.
I
I
guess
was
the
gonna say I
turning
like.
point. Yeah,
No, you go.
yeah. I think the turning point would be like whether or not you think Gibbs is gonna go off because he's been more of like a floor play. Like he gets like 10 to 15 every week, but he hasn't had that 20-point game. So yeah, but that's what you're gonna say.
I was gonna say I think Gibbs is actually a good matchup. Dallas really hasn't been able to
Yeah.
stop the run all year, and Detroit plays better when they just pound the rock. So I feel like Mason will be an interesting one with playing on Thursday. But I do like the Washington guys against Baltimore. It feels like the Washington game, the Baltimore game feel like shootouts on Sunday.
Yeah, Cody, any thoughts on this? Start this decision.
What is he trying to decide between? I can't see it on my screen. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Pick 3 full PPR. It's Gibbs, Mason, Mixon, Brian Robinson, McLaurin, and Ayuk.
I'm definitely going to go Brian Robinson. I'm definitely going to go Gibbs. I'm a little hesitant on Mixon just because of the injury, kind of still up in the air. And then I think Ayuk has finally showed up. I did want to touch on this on the Thursday night game a little bit. It's been a struggle for 4 weeks, right? For Ayuk owners, because you had to draft him pretty high, and he was doing next to nothing for fantasy managers. I myself benched him in week 5 just as a wait and see, and lo and behold, he is here now. So, Debo didn't do much in that last game against the Cardinals. So I'd go Ayuk in this one with Gibbs and Brian Robinson. I'm not taking any Commanders running back out of my lineup until we have a reason to otherwise. That offensive line for Washington is too good right now. PPR or not, you're rolling those guys week in and week out. Eckler too.
Yeah, so he's saying it's it's a 10-man league. I've been trying to trade with people all day. Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
should
think
definitely trade.
definitely. Yeah, I think it's definitely consensus with like Gibbs, Ayuk, Mason, like the Niners guys. I guess the Washington and Niner guys are kind of like just pick who your favorite is out of that. But yeah, because the Ravens have been more of a pass funnel, but at the same time, like if the Commander get to the goal line, like they're gonna give it to Brian Robinson. It's basically like the volume versus like touchdown equity part of it. That's basically what the answer comes down to. But yeah, going to the Sunday night football game, the Bengals are coming off a close loss from the Ravens, and the Giants are coming off a close win. This could be a very interesting game if the Giants can keep pace with the Bengals. I feel like. Cody, how do you see this game?
So the Bengals are kind of like their mascot in the jungle, just like crawling around, waiting to pounce on a victim. And this victim just happens to be a giant. Okay, I think the Bengals are finally going to come to life here. Their defense is going to do something, anything in this game against Daniel Jones. He usually doesn't put together back-to-back good games in a row like he did in Seattle. I think the Bengals are going to win this one pretty easily. I think it's going to be very fantasy rich on both sides, particularly if Neighbors is back. But I could see both Chase and Higgins having top 10 finishes this week because the Bengals are ready to roll. Burrow is playing angry, and that offense is scoring a ton of points. Their defense just can't stop anybody.
Yeah. Real quick, sorry. They had this predicament where AJ Brown's still in IR and Mahomes is out on a bye. Which two should I drop? Pittman, Mooney, Wandale, Myers, or Najee? Their running back room is Saquon, Jacobs, Chuba, and Najee. I definitely would drop Najee.
Myers too.
Myers, yeah. I think Pittman you can't drop just because like he still has like in terms of like the offensive environment, like the Colts are in a way better environment at this point. And yeah, Mooney and Wandale, like you can't drop those two, I feel like.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Mooney and Wandale, they're gonna get the guaranteed targets with both those teams. Pittman too with Flacco at the quarterback. I wouldn't touch Raiders offensively at all right now. I mean, Aiden O'Connell starting on Sunday. You just don't know what's gonna happen. And also like Najee, obviously he's valuable now with Warren being out, but like he still isn't putting up those numbers at this point. But AJ's gonna be back this week, so
yeah. But going back to Bengals Giants, I think the Bengals have to win this game if they want. If they drop to the Giants, like
yep.
I don't know what the odds are, but I don't think they could even think about playoffs if they drop to the Giants. But if Malik Neighbors is back in, like Daniel Jones has actually not. It's been pretty good, like relatively just not turning the ball over. Even with Devin Singletary out, they were able to run the ball on Seattle, And the Bengal defense has been terrible this year. So yeah, in terms of the one of the other games that I found notable was the division game with the Bucks and the Saints without Derek Carr. Um, that's kind of interesting, just because like I think they're deciding between Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner. I mean, I think everyone wants to see Spencer Rattler at this point. What do you think, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, what a bummer for the Saints offense, starting off the year so hot, 2-0, getting a couple big
Yeah.
wins. Rashid Shaheed was looking great. Alvin Kamara's been doing old school Alvin Kamara things, but man, Alvin Kamara is getting a little too many miles on the tires to be ridden this hard. And so, I mean, in this
Right.
game, I don't know what else they're going to do besides just feed Kamara and, hope they can get Rashid over the top. So I don't know. I think that this could be a wildly out of control game, especially if the Saints start off stumbling. The Bucks are kind of hungry coming off that heartbreaking
Yeah.
loss last Thursday night to the Atlanta Falcons. So I think the Bucks usually play pretty well in New Orleans, and I like them to get off to a hot start and not take their foot off the gas.
Right. Max, where do you see this division game going?
Yeah, I do like Tampa bouncing back from such a tough loss to Atlanta on the Thursday night game. I think it's a perfect bounce back game. I've never been a Spencer Rattler person since college, so I just think they're kind of screwed right now at the quarterback position at the moment in New Orleans. And I thought they would use Jamal Williams a bit more. He had some good runs on Monday night. They just run Kamara, as you said, kind of down too much. But I just like Tampa bouncing back. I think their defense is way better than they played to on Thursday night. So I just think it's gonna be all around. It's a big game because it gets separation with the Bucks. But I do like Tampa to bounce back.
Yeah, they're definitely. We'll see if it's the Falcons or the Bucks that come out of the NFC South with a potential playoff berth. But yeah, for the Saints, this is they had their moment, but we kind of saw some of even before Derek Carr went out, their offense has been struggling for like the past like 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, I guess in terms of like the Devontae Adams thing, you kind of can just scratch that team off the list. Like I don't think he would want to go there at this point if Carr is out for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the other notable games this week, I saw that the this might be potential game of the year with the Commanders going to Baltimore against the Ravens. I mean, yeah, I don't know how either defense is going to stop each other if the Bengals went in that direction. Yeah, Cody, where do you see that game going?
Yeah, I'm a little bit shocked to see the Ravens as 6.5-point favorites. That seems a little hefty given how good the Commanders' passing attack has been. Excuse me, and how relatively poor the Ravens' pass defense has been. So that money line is a little bit weird to me. I expect it to be a little bit closer of a game. The over/under set at 51.5. I feel like you could probably see that over hitting as well. As far as fantasy goes, though, I mean, it's going to be fantasy rich. I think no matter who you have on either of these teams going against these defenses, they're pretty much just must starts. McLaurin, you got to start him. B-Rob, Eckler, start. Lamar, you got to start him. I kind of want to get your take on the current tight end situation with Likely having a touchdown last week, another week where Andrews was kind of meh. And, where do you see this Ravens passing attack competing with the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, they're the Ravens definitely are going to obviously use Derrick Henry like they have been for the past few weeks first. And when that got bottled up against the Bengals, for basically the whole game till that overtime run. They're just gonna air it out, and I just think that their tight end situation, it's just gonna be like likely gonna get a little bit more. Um, Andrews might run the same amount of routes as Kolar, but I don't know if, in terms of like who demands more attention, the defense is going to look at Andrew first before Charlie Kolar, because he had a few big catches in that game where he was just wide open. So I think going to that, yeah, Andrews is not really. If anything, he's either a drop or a bench and just stash and just see if like there could be an injury. You never know to the tight end. Maybe he gets ramped up a bit more throughout the season. In terms of the line, I think the 6.5. I think it's because the Ravens defense historically has been very good against rookie quarterbacks, but Jane Daniels is like not even. I don't know how much you can consider him a rookie because just because he's he's experienced. He's like take this massive jump from week 2 and 3 to now. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty crazy game. The other game I want to talk about was Lions at Cowboys. I didn't stay up to watch all this game because the Steelers Cowboys game because it was so late. It was like midnight Eastern when it ended, or like 1 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah, 1 a.m.
Yeah, Max, how do you see the Lions faring out in this game?
I like Detroit. They're coming off of a bye where they're playing really good football. Dallas has kind of just gotten away with not playing good football the last 2 weeks. I mean, Dak did not play a good enough game on Sunday night. Couple just like really bad interceptions. Him and CD are just keeps yelling at each other, not in a good way the last 2 weeks. And CD just 2 catches in the second half. I feel like Pittsburgh just kind of let that game out of their hands. But the good news is for Detroit is that they're a good enough offense where Dallas throws them 2 picks again. Detroit will take advantage of those mistakes. So I feel like this is it's a big game for Dallas. If they win this game, they'll probably see themselves as contenders in the NFC. But I do like Detroit in this one.
Yeah. Cody, your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think ultimately the Lions will come out on top also. My one hang up with them is their defense. So the Lions right now, coming off the bye, so it's going to be a little bit skewed for teams that have played 5 games as opposed to their 4. But they're allowing 349 yards a game as a defense, and they've allowed 9 total touchdowns. The Cowboys have lost a few games that have been close, so they're kind of lacking in the scoring department. But they're still getting yards. They're getting chunk yardage down the field as well. I mean, even with Jalen Tolbert last game subbing in for Brandon Cooks on IR, there's a little bit of apprehension there I have with that Lions defense. They can get after the passer, but I could see a little bit more of a shootout potential here between these two teams. And the Dallas offense being able to exploit some soft spots in that Lions defense. So I could see it being a little bit closer than people think and a little bit higher scoring than people think.
Yeah. Before we go on to more fantasy preview for this week, we'll just touch on the Eagles versus Browns coming off the bye. I mean, this is a smash spot for all the Eagles players, coming off a few rough games, but now they're getting back. AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, they should be right back on schedule. Max, just touch on the game real quick.
Yeah, it's a must-win for them for the Eagles this week. This is the perfect team to play off a bye at home. Watson is still the starting quarterback for Cleveland heading into this week, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but as an Eagles fan, I'm very happy about it. But they have not played any good football really this year outside of really Saquon saving them in a lot of spots throughout the season. Again, Jalen just keeps turning the ball over. But at this point, they haven't been healthy. I think people realize how valuable AJ Brown is. Without him, there's just no deep threat on the team. So AJ will be back. Lane Johnson and Devontae should be out of concussion protocol. I think that will just make things a lot less stressful. But this is as big of a must-win as I've seen from an Eagles team in Week 6.
Yeah. Cody, real quick, you can touch on this game. In terms of like for fantasy, I know you have Amari Cooper. We have a question from Jason. Will you trade Ramondre Stevenson and one of Sutton / Wandale / Amari Cooper for Brees Hall? That's pretty interesting. I think Cooper, you can't trade Cooper yet because if the Browns eventually make the QB switch, or if Amari gets traded, then his value goes all the way up. What do you think about this trade and then the Browns?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do this trade. I think, Ramondre Stevenson had a little bit of a down week in week 4, and the head coach for the Patriots said, hey, we're going to start Dixon. So I was just like, we'll see that. But then Ramondre kind of bounced back and had a pretty serviceable game. I'm not going to bench him, especially with Drake May getting a start. I think they're going to lean heavy on the run game. And, if he can catch a couple balls out of the backfield, dump off from a rookie quarterback, you're going to regret not having that. And then, like you said, I'm certainly not ready to pull the pin on Amari Cooper, even though it's been a bit of a struggle so far. He's had a couple big plays and a couple games called back by penalties. So yeah, I'm not doing that to give up Brees Hall or to get Brees Hall, who's also kind of had his struggles as of recently.
Yeah, in terms of like where the top 3 drafted running backs, we got McCaffrey still on IR, Bijan splitting touches with Tyler Algier, and then Brees is going for like Stevenson and like a wide receiver 2/3. Yeah. Well, I think this week, just I would maybe do the Stevenson and Courtland Sutton for Brees, just because they're playing the Bills and the Bills' run defense is not great. So I think you could take advantage of that. I think that if you have to trade Amari Cooper and or Wandale, I probably wouldn't, but for Sutton, I probably would. Then we have this what side wins this trade in half PPR? Gibbs, Darnold, Dell, Quinn Johnston for Marvin Harrison, Najee, Baker, and Mark Andrews.
Blockbuster trade.
Yeah, when you throw in like the QBs and tight ends, it's like whatever.
Yeah,
like,
a lot of underperformers there. A lot of those.
Yeah. To me, that seems like a bit of a trade, like trading players just for the sake of trading players. I don't really see a clear winner either way. And usually in those situations, I just say, don't do it. It's not worth it. Yeah, I would just say no.
I'll say, I guess I would say prefer the person who's getting the Gibbs part of the trade, because with Nico Collins getting pretty banged up, Tank Dell will be the number 2 guy now for Houston. So, Najee and Andrews are just, and even though Marvin's a great player, there's like times where you sometimes forget he's on the field because they just don't target him enough on Arizona. So I guess I like the person who went with the Gibbs part of the trade.
Yeah, same. I guess any other week 6 games we want to get to that we didn't cover on. Max, you can start.
I really like the Arizona Green Bay game this week.
That's also a good one.
I'm big on Green Bay. I know that they haven't been playing top tier football. It's been such a weird year for them. But I know Arizona is coming off such a high and they're gonna have a lot of momentum. I just don't think I really like Green Bay at home this week. Again, Love's another guy who's having a good year statistically, but just again, keeps throwing these stupid interceptions. So once they get that cleaned up, they'll be fine. But I still am a big fan of Green Bay. So that's definitely a game I like. One of the best games of the day, I think, on Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in that game, I mean, last week for the Packers against the Rams, I mean, if it wasn't for Tucker Kraft, what did the Packers offense do? I mean,
Yeah.
Dontavian Wicks was
much.
nowhere to be found, and he was projected to be a big shooting star with Romeo Doubs out, for conduct detrimental to the team. And, Josh Jacobs struggled a little bit. And so I don't know. I guess I'm not quite as sold on this Packers offense. Like you said, the turnover problems that Love has shown in the couple games back with the rust after injuring his knee week 1 against your Eagles. And on the other hand, I like the Cardinals offense to keep showing up. Their defense seems to just do enough and especially on special teams too, to keep them hanging around. The Cardinals defense is definitely exploitable, but I mean, they've had a couple of really good games, like against the Niners. They had a pretty good game against the Bills several weeks back. And, I don't know. I kind of like this game for fantasy purposes on both sides. I think, if Doubs comes back in the lineup and Wicks can get going and the usual Jaden Reed does his thing, I think it's fantasy viable on both sides. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has a bit of a day here too.
Yeah. Real quick, Cody, since you're a Raiders fan, you can talk on the Steelers going to Vegas this week.
Start them all. Start all your Steelers against the Raiders. No, it's a bit of a train wreck right now, especially in the media with Devontae Adams and then the quarterback getting benched for Aiden O'Connell. It's just kind of like the Raiders beat the Ravens. They lose to teams they should beat, like the Panthers, and they beat the Browns. It's just kind of like you never know week to week what team's going to show up. So for me, fantasy is a game about consistency, and the Raiders defense is consistently exploitable. So I would say start your Steelers against the Raiders, and it's a complete dart throw on offense. I'm not starting either Raiders quarterback. Really, the only guy on offense I'm thinking about starting is Brock Bowers at tight end, since tight end is such a wasteland. He's produced week in and week out, had his first touchdown last week on a nice jump ball. So I'm steering clear of all Raiders running backs against that Steelers defense. So it's pretty much Brock Bowers for tight end in most leagues. And then in deeper leagues, if you need to throw a dart for a Trey Tucker or Jacoby Myers, man, you're a little bit braver than I am.
Right. Yeah, we can go to the position ranking over on Fantasy Pros, and for this week at quarterback, I think a potential top 5 player I think is Dak. They're against the Lions' run defense that's been well improved. Like with Rico Dowdle, I just feel like they're gonna have to throw all over the yard against the Lions if they want to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess the same could be said for Jordan Love as well. I guess one interesting thing is like if I'm kind of surprised Josh Allen's ranked 8th, because I still think I know he struggled against the Jets defense. I still think he has like decent rush equity, so he can still run for a touchdown or two. But yeah, Max, where do you see at quarterback potential sleeper or player you want to start or sit?
I really like Cousins this week against Carolina. I think obviously I don't think it's over 500 yards again, but I feel like that was the first game where they got all of the top talented guys involved. Pitts finally had a really good game. London was really good. Mooney, I know he dropped the ball, but he was in the action. They're playing Carolina, and again, I like Chicago and Caleb, but Chicago just chewed him up alive offensively. So I think Kirk's a really good start this week. I don't really know about Brock Purdy being like a top 10 QB this week. Seattle's secondary is like kind of the only thing that's like, it's a very special secondary in my opinion. So Ayuk kind of been hit or miss. the offense as a whole at San Francisco has been hit or miss. So he would be one of my like underrated like sits at quarterback this week.
Yeah, I think for the Falcons Panthers, basically start all your Falcons just in case they go off, like Bijan, Pitts, like Drake London, obviously. Yeah, Cody, what do you see at the quarterback position this week?
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised to see CJ Stroud at quarterback 11. I mean, he's had a couple down weeks this year with Nico Collins in the lineup. Now without Nico Collins, I guess I'm just a little bit skeptical about where he's going to get that production because he's not a runner. On the other hand, Caleb Williams, ranked at 13, has an absolute smash matchup against the worst pass defense in the NFL this week and has a bit of a rushing floor. I think he's averaging like somewhere around 25 yards a game, something like that. So I would definitely flip-flop those two very comfortably. And I could even see, Caleb Williams outperforming Justin Fields, Brock Purdy for fantasy purposes as well and cracking that top 10.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For running back, we have Derrick Henry and Saquon at the top, obviously. Jordan Mason. I'm hope this should be the week for Bijan and Breece Hall specifically because they have probably one of the best matchups on paper to smash. Yeah, Max, what do you see at the running back position this week?
An underrated guy is going back to the Bears is Swift, former Eagle. He has been getting a lot of touches the last 2 weeks, and in a game where you would think Chicago would be playing with the lead, I feel like he could continue to get the same amount of touches. He gets a lot of catches as well, and it feels like when he's humming, the Bears' offense is really humming. So 13, I think he's a really good start for this week.
Yeah. Cody, what other running back do you think can jump into like this top 20 here? Or into the top 10, basically?
It's funny as in, even when teams just don't. So Tennessee Titans coming off of a bye, and they were in just a lost wash of a Monday Night Football game the week prior against Miami. It was an ugly game. Nobody watched it. Thankfully, there was another game on. It was a Monday night doubleheader that week. But Tony Pollard had a great game and was the player of the game on the field getting interviewed after the game was over. Tony Pollard is going to run rampant on that Colts defense. The Colts just got smashed up by Tank Bigsby, who is the number one scoring running back in week 5 last week in PPR leagues. And Tony Pollard hasn't been ceding very many touches to running mate Tajay Spears. So I really like Tony Pollard this week to crack the top 10. And one of them I don't agree with that's ranked at number 3 is J.P. Mason. So I was listening to the 49ers radio broadcast of the Cardinals game last week, and they kept saying J.P. Mason, J.P. Mason. I'm like, who are they talking about? That's what the local announcers call Jordan Mason, J.P. So anyway, I don't think J.P. is going to get as much running room as he thinks against that Seattle defense this week. I know they're down one of their top defensive linemen who just had to go on IR. But they're going to be fired up at home after that brutal block field goal loss to the Giants last week. So I would really downgrade J.P. Mason out of the top 10, and I would leapfrog Tony Pollard into the top 10.
Yeah, I that's definitely possible. Like he kind of he had a decent game last week, but it wasn't like he's definitely been more of a solid floor type player because if he doesn't get the touchdowns, he doesn't see any receiving work. So that's kind of just where his upside goes to. I'm surprised they don't have David Montgomery up just because like he's been going toe to toe with Gibbs this season so far. So yeah, I would probably find a way to put him up here. But yeah, I guess yeah. in terms of
Yeah,
wide
I mean
receivers,
Jordan Mason. I mean he had
yeah.
8.8 fantasy points last week in PPR leagues against the Arizona Cardinals rush defense that hasn't been very good. And I just think Seattle's defense is much better as a whole, and their rush defense is better. So I just him being ranked
Mhm.
third overall really has me scratching my head, especially with the Ayuk breakout game that we had, and Debo's back, and yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, with the Niners players back, like he's definitely going to see potentially less potential touchdowns. Unless they're in the goal line. But yeah, at receiver, I'm kind of surprised they have Lamb at one here. But yeah, I guess Max, what do you see at receiver this week?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of shocked with the Chris Godwin being really high in the top 10. He's been really good for them, but again, his only problem is that he just doesn't really get in the end zone that much. It seems like every touchdown is going to Evans. So I feel like he can be a top 10 receiver, but he's very touchdown um, reliant. The guy I like that can jump in, I do like T. Higgins a lot. For Cincinnati against the Giants. Now the Giants have a good defense, but Banks will be on Chase in that game, and I just feel like Higgins has a good chance to be the number one guy for the Bengals in that Sunday night game. And he's also been getting into the end zone recently for them as well. So the Bengals offense has not been the reason why they've been losing these games. So I would keep riding with Bengals offensive players.
Jared asked, he got offered Pittman for Kyle Pitts. What are your thoughts? I guess it depends on like what your other tight end is,
yep.
but I don't I don't know. It's
It's
kind
a
of tough. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, so I have Pitts in fantasy. It's a weird up and down, but it was a good sign that he got 8 targets. Pittman's very hit or miss. He's very good if Flacco's in the lineup, and not good if Richardson is. So I think I agree. If you have a reliable number 2 tight end, I would do the deal. But if you don't, then you just gotta stick with Pitts.
Yeah, for sure. I guess Cody, what do you see at the receiver position this week?
Yeah, for me, receivers this week is kind of all about the sleepers. So there's a sleeper
Yeah,
that is mostly for deep leagues, but Xavier Hutchinson for the Houston Texans. So Tank Dell is probably going to be the de facto number one wide receiver for the Texans moving forward with Nico Collins on IR. But Xavier Hutchinson, he's going to step into that sort of Tank Dell role. And I mean, Diggs is still there as wide receiver one. I guess Tank's the wide receiver two, and then Xavier Hutchinson's going to slide in that wide receiver 3 role. And why I think that's valuable is that while the Texans running back game is kind of up in the air, you got Cam Akers. Yeah, he scored last week, but he's not really doing a whole lot. You got Darryl Bungawale and Mixon still hurt. I kind of like a sneaky week this week for the Texans offense, and Xavier Hutchinson makes exciting. My other 2 sleepers ranked at 40 and 41 here are Keenan Allen for the Bears and Jalen Tolbert for the
yeah,
Cowboys. So Jalen Tolbert, he's going to get action against that Lions secondary that I talked about earlier. I think that's going to be a higher scoring game. I'm going to smash the over on that one. And I mean, all it takes is a couple big plays for him. If he walks in the end zone again, like he did last week, Jalen Tolbert, being ranked 41, he's going to pay dividends at that ranking. And Keenan Allen, I just think this is the week that he gets on the stat sheet. Last week was about him being on the field, his presence, being that veteran leadership out there for Caleb Williams, confidence booster. But I think he actually, I could see him getting 6-7 catches, close to 90 yards and a tutty this week. So those are my guys.
yeah. I think I don't think it's injury related, but yeah, Tank Dell has not gotten going this year.
No.
So like even with Collins out, like someone's just gonna have to step up in this group. Diggs is obviously gonna eat, but yeah, I guess you could say the same with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Rome. Like there's gonna be a week where Keenan Allen is gonna get featured a little bit more, and then obviously Rome falls in that pecking order. But yeah, in terms of like T Higgins, like yeah, I definitely think he
Mhm.
can get into that top 10. For Godwin, it's kind of interesting because like Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans have this beef, and
Yeah.
yeah, normally, actually, I guess maybe my pushback on the Godwin thing is like because normally Evans struggles heavily against the Saints, like consistently.
Mhm.
Maybe this year's different, but we'll see. But yeah, Godwin's kind of like if he's not getting those end zone looks, he's definitely a little bit. He'll have a higher floor, but his ceiling won't be as high, obviously.
Yeah.
Let's see. In terms of yeah, obviously, if Malik Neighbors goes, you're playing him. Drake London, Chase, Amana. Yeah, I guess I want to talk about Zay Flowers. I actually think um, this could be another potential smash game for him, just because when the Ravens can't like run the ball with Derrick Henry, they usually just do what they did last week. They just do all the crossing patterns and come back to Zay Flowers, and he was able to get that like wide receiver one production for sure. But yeah, any other receivers that could potentially push this list? Max.
I still like. I know we talked about the Falcons earlier, but Mooney is just going to keep getting the ball for
Oh yeah,
Atlanta.
Mooney. Yeah.
They're just all over Drake London at this point, and he's the number 2 guy. So I like really all of the top pass catchers for Atlanta. Pitts, the 2 receivers, and Bijan this week to have a good week.
Yeah. Any final thoughts for receivers? It could be like potential 6-2 because like
Well,
someone like Deion. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think I just saw. Can you scroll down? Yeah, I thought I saw something that I was like about to say. Now I forgot. Yeah, like I don't get like the Christian Kirk thing with Jacksonville
Oh
whatsoever. I feel like that's been one of the worst contracts in football the last couple of years, and like no one talks about how Christian Kirk got paid, and I don't think anyone realizes he's even on the Jaguars half the time. So I don't. He's still. I don't think he's a top 40 wide receiver in fantasy. I could be wrong. It's a weird. It's London. Weird things happen for the Jaguars in London, but he's not a pass catcher I would rely on.
yeah. Him and like Gabe Davis, like they show up
Yeah.
for a few catches, but it's mostly been Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
Cody, any final thoughts for receivers?
Yeah, I'm kind of staring down the 27 and 28 overall rankings for Jamison Williams
Okay.
and JSN. Jamison Williams, man, he's just kind of one of those dudes. You just got to find a way to get him into your lineup. He might
Yeah.
have a down week here and there, but he has these long touchdowns, and he just reminds you of those old school like banger bust wide receivers like Vincent
Mhm.
Jackson back in the day. He just kind of has that flavor. He's a dude that's gonna win you your week if he goes off. So you got to plug him in. And then JSN, I think he's really coming on. I saw this amazing footage of JSN faking that the
Oh
ball was in the air and allowed Gino
yeah,
to get
yeah,
loose and run for a first down. I mean, that's like cerebral right there. And I love that he's got that Ohio State receiver pedigree and he's cerebral and his time is coming. And it could happen this week if they scheme him up some get open plays against that 49ers secondary.
yeah. Before we go to tight ends, Derek sent Dave Montgomery and Garrett Wilson for Bijan and Devonta Smith. That's actually an interesting trade. I think yeah,
I don't know
that's
about
really
that.
interesting.
I like the person who's getting David Montgomery and Garrett Wilson in
Yeah.
that trade. Bijan's so up and down, not because of his fault, just because of the system for some reason. And Devontae, yeah, I don't know who would make that trade if you're giving up Montgomery and Wilson for that.
Yeah, no way. Your fantasy is about consistency, man, and you don't get any more consistent than David Montgomery at running back. He's got such a high floor. You don't want to give that up. And then the upside of Garrett Wilson, nah, man, sit pat.
Yeah, we just saw like the 20 target game to Gary Wilson. I mean, it could get even better, like because a lot of the rock concepts are kind of like not the best, but I mean they could keep feeding him, and yeah, I think this is more of like like people are buying low on Bijan and
Yeah.
potentially Devonta Smith, but at the same time, like when AJ Brown comes back, like Devonta Smith will still be good, but he won't be like a wide receiver one like Gary Wilson for sure.
Yeah, just the
Um,
guaranteed targets. It's important in fantasy.
Yep.
yeah. Also, the Montgomery touchdowns. I think he scored a touchdown like every single game. I think
Yeah.
along with Derrick Henry. So yeah, that's just amazing for it to have. But at tight end, I think the position is coming back a little bit for sure with Tucker Craft boom week and Trey
Yeah.
McBride, Brock Bowers, Kittle obviously. I guess where do you see like any of the later guys kind of jumping up into the top 10?
Yeah, I guess I
Max, you
can
can
go.
start.
Yeah, I cover tight ends. So if you guys are listening, I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays basically will be out. I do the waiver wire and the start sit for tight ends. I would say there's 2 sits in the top 10 that I don't like. Before I get into the ones I like, I think Goddard and Kincaid are kind of like easy sits right now. Goddard has been really good for the Eagles, but usually when they're at total full strength, you just don't know the target share with him. There'll be games where he can get into that 5-6 catch range if AJ and Smith are playing, and then Kincaid was a guy I was expecting to take like a major step
Yeah.
forward in the Bills' offense, but he's barely getting like 2 or 3 catches a game now in that offense. You feel like they want him to get the ball more, and it's a bad matchup. The Jets' defense has actually been good for them over the last couple of weeks. But like I think Zach Ertz is a really good play this week for Washington. Baltimore again doesn't have a great passing defense, and Ertz has when you have a rookie quarterback, it's always great to have a reliable tight end. So I think Ertz is a really strong start this week against the Ravens.
Yeah. Cody, any thoughts on the tight end?
Yeah. So, what was I going to say here? Man. Yeah, I don't know. I think, the Green Bay Packers defense, giving up a little bit to tight ends. Not a lot last week against the Rams. That's what I was just trying to look up here. But, for Trey McBride being ranked number 2, I think that's accurate. So far, McBride hasn't really lived up to that number 1 overall tight end bidding
Yeah, no.
that was dawned upon him preseason. But I do concur with Fantasy Pros rankings for his matchup this week. The one that I really want to talk about, though, is Cole Kmet at number 12 going up against Jacksonville. So last week, Jacksonville put their best linebacker on IR. And he was their middle linebacker, Oluokun, and he's just a stalwart in the middle of that defense. So Caleb Williams has shown that he trusts Cole Kmet, and Cole Kmet has had a couple of fantasy viable games this year, top 10 finishes. So I do like him to get into the end zone this week. And, if he sprinkles in 3, 4, 5 catches and, 65 yards, he could easily be top 10, if not top 5 this week against an exploitable Jacksonville linebacking core.
Right. Yeah, I think tight end this week is kind of self-explanatory. I know like a few fantasy teams that have like 2 of these guys in the top 10 on their team. I feel like if you're playing redraft, you kind of should just trade one of them and then just waiver wire the backup because it's kind of like Cole Kmet, like Tyler Conklin, like Pat Fryermuth, like they're relatively consistent, so they could be fine backup. Like you don't necessarily need 2 of these guys on your roster, but yeah, I definitely agree with those takes. Real quick, we'll just do kicker and defense. Cody, do you have a kicker in mind this week that you think will go off?
Oh yeah, man. I'm on the Washington Commanders bandwagon. Chugga
Oh
chugga
yeah,
chew friggin' chew chew. Austin Seibert's my guy. I think I've got him on every league. It's just a prolific offense, and he's kicking the ball, a
yeah,
lot of PATs. He's not missing any field goal attempts. So yeah, Austin Seibert to the moon.
yeah. Max, you want to chime in on kicker? In your
I'll
fantasy
go
this
for
week?
one. Yeah, Dicker the kicker for the Chargers. I like him a lot this week. Denver actually has a very good defense, so I think if the Chargers are going to have to kick a couple field goals, and it helps being in the altitude, so I actually like him
Yeah,
making a run this week. Yeah.
yeah. We didn't really talk about it, but the Broncos are becoming like they're kind of a force
Yeah.
in the NFL, low key. So yeah, I think with the Chargers just running the ball a lot, and Justin Herbert has been kind of up and down in terms of like, well, actually, just their passing efficiency has just been pretty. The volume's been pretty low, but in
Mhm.
terms of like kicking wise, like they could definitely find themselves in advantageous spots for that.
Yeah,
Defense.
I want to just
Uh,
echo what Max said real quick about Dicker the kicker. So, for Fantasy Pros to have that as a C grade start, I mean, think about it. They're an offense that they can move the football. They don't score a lot of points. And he's
mhm,
kicking at altitude in Denver. So, I mean, we're talking bombing 50-yarders plus all day if that
Yeah.
offense sputters out. I mean, I think that's an incredible bet, particularly if you're an underdog in your matchup this week. What a better flyer to take on a kicker. They're usually free, or you can pick them up, free and fab, or you can pick them up on the waiver easily. Plug them in. If your kicker gets you 20 points because he boots four 50-yard field goals, I mean, cha-ching. I think that's
yeah,
an
that's the
excellent
difference.
call, Max.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick on defenses. I know I got the Texans and Eagles in a bunch of leagues, and the Bears and Broncos too for maybe
Yep.
like one or two of them. But yeah, you guys agree with the top defenses, or do you have another team in mind that's getting slept on the radar?
Well,
I like. Yeah, you go, Cody.
oh, sorry about that. I pretty much agree with it. I want to get Max's take on the Eagles here in a minute. But
Yeah.
the Indianapolis Colts, they're going up against Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee
Oh
Titans
yeah,
have a
yeah,
pretty good run game going with Pollard. I recommended Pollard earlier in this podcast. I still stand behind that. But as a fantasy defense, Will Levis is going to Will Levis, and if he
yeah.
if he does
Every
his
week.
thing against the Colts this
Mhm.
week, I mean we're looking at a possible pick six. We're looking at several sacks and probably an interception or two. So again, kind of along the lines of like a kicker. If you're down in your matchup and you need to take a flyer on a defense that hasn't been great, but they're going up against
Mhm.
one of the worst offenses, why not take a flyer? So I could see the Colts finishing top 5 this week for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess let's talk about the Eagles. I mean, they should be that high because they're playing the Browns, and the Browns' offense hasn't been good. And the Eagles have bounced back at least this season when they've had bad week. They had a kind of a really rough start for the first 2 weeks, and then they dominated the Saints, had a really good defensive performance. I feel like they could just bounce again with the bye week, with the extra time to prepare against a bad Browns offense. I picked up the Eagles, which I usually don't like starting people on my own teams, but I actually picked up the Eagles in the majority of my leagues. So I'm betting on them having a good bounce back week this week.
Yeah. Before we send off real quick, we have a question from Ryan. Would you send Jamar Chase for DK Metcalf and Brees Hall? I need running back help. I don't know if I do that. Even if I needed running back, I would just try to find somebody on the waivers or something.
Yeah, I
Uh,
Brees is making me nervous. He's easily probably the most talented guy on offense, but they really can't run the ball because they don't have a really bad offensive line, and he's splitting time with Braylon Allen a lot, which makes me a little nervous. Like last week's game formula was not good for Brees Hall. So that would make me a little nervous. And Chase is playing much better now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you guys' takes on that. I'm just going to offer an alternate perspective for this trade. So, head coach for the Jets just got fired. And we talked earlier in the podcast about how these interim coaches tend to win their first game because the team is so emotionally charged. They're motivated. They come out ready to win. And Aaron Rodgers hasn't been playing good. And what do you do when your quarterback isn't playing good? You lean on your run game. If there's anything that's going to get a coach fired, it's not feeding a running back that was ranked as high as Brees Hall was to start the season. So I think if you have a chance to buy low right now, and so you're going to get DK Metcalf, who's a top 10 wide receiver week in and week out, and Brees Hall, who has so much upside and potential, I would say do it this week because I think he's going to go off against that Buffalo Bills defense on Monday night, and you're not going to be able to afford him after this. This is a buy low price, so I would say do it.
I think for sure if you need like the win this week, and then depending on like what your other wide receiver options are, if you can get by with like DK Metcalf, who can get into the top 10 for a few weeks, and then whoever your receiver 2 is, I guess I would do it. I think it's just like I don't know if he might get a good week this week, but in terms of like the overall split with Braylon Allen, like he's also been a really good player for them. Like I don't know if they would just totally take him away. Like he would have some part, but to your point, like Bruce should get the majority this week. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the fourth and goal. Cody, where can they find your socials?
Yeah, I'm on X, Cody from Montana, underscores in between. And then on Insta, I'm at Scenic42.
Yeah, Max.
On Twitter, I'm at Diddenberg Max with the D and the M capitalized. And Instagram, I am at Max Diddenberg, no capitalized letters there.
Yeah. Real quick, this is the actual last. Getting a lot of comments. Would you trade Najee and Wandale for Terry McLaurin?
Yes.
I think I would
yes.
just because Najee just not a good fantasy running back this year.
Yeah, I would definitely do that in a heartbeat if I could.
Yeah.
The other owner would be open to that.
Totally. If you're getting the best player in the trade, which is McLaurin, I would say do it as long as you can give up that running back depth. Yeah, I'd go for it.
Yeah, but all right.